Welcome to episode 7 of
Too right.
Damn Right. We remembered the name of our thing, Annunziata. We did very well.
Stephen can count to 7. It's amazing.
I always say that lawyers are the bright children who can't do maths. And when I say that to my fellow lawyers, I generally get a sort of giggle of agreement because, kids who are clever but who can't do maths need to go somewhere.
Uh,
And that's really what the law is for.
and the clever ones who can do maths go to the city at a guess.
And earn bucket loads more. Yeah.
I don't think you lawyers do too badly.
Well, the ones like me don't, but a lot of the unhappiness in our society is caused by lawyers who don't earn very much money, who are the criminal lawyers, in particular, the human rights lawyers. I don't. I'll just tell you a story that. So I was talking to a human rights QC, and I was saying I was doing a big case down in Tanzania in Africa, and I was saying that I was doing that, and she said, "Oh, I'm doing a big human rights case in Kenya, which is just north of
No,
Tanzania."
yeah, next door.
And so I just being me, because I'm a bit childish, foolish sometimes. I just said, "Well, darling, you will absolutely adore the first class lounge in Nairobi because it is stunning, it is brilliant, it's absolutely and it is. It's a really good. Nairobi is a proper, kick-ass city." The first class lounge in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania is a bit more, or certainly was then, a bit less impressive. But Nairobi is very impressive. And she just turned to me and she just said, "I'm flying economy." It's like,
Yes.
bit of a difference. Oh, sorry, I knew there was a difference. And a lot of the time when people who watch us see my fellow barristers being rude to me on Twitter, a lot of the time it's the earnings difference between a commercial barrister and a particularly criminal barristers, because they are paid by the public purse. In their defense, I would say that they are badly paid. I do think they are badly paid. They're paid like £46 to do a hearing, and that's all their earnings for the day. And, probably I'm out of touch. So probably that's been raised to £52 or something. This is just ridiculous. It is bad money. The criminal justice system needs complete overhauling. But that's a much bigger question. And but
So,
when people,
Stephen, I know we wanted to discuss Starmer because it's kind of impossible not to, right?
yeah.
Um, but he's done a lot of his human rights stuff, and so has Herma, pro bono. And if they're earning such bad money, explain to someone like me who knows very little about how all of this works, how are they affording to do all this pro bono work if they're not very well paid for their normal work? I always assumed they were paid lots and lots for their normal work, and therefore they could take on freebies. But how are they taking on freebies if they're not very well paid anyway?
Do you know what? That's probably why this show exists, because that is a phenomenally good question that I honestly haven't actually turned my mind to. I mean, what went on? So Phil Shiner, who is the guy who is the solicitor who went after the war vets in Iraq. By the way, this is mirrored in Australia. They basically have their version of Phil Shiner. Now, he was arrested, prosecuted and convicted of fraud and struck off the roll. So we know he's a wrong un. But we also know that Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer are deeply connected to him. In terms of economics, I suspect that's where a lot of the money was coming from. I suspect a lot of the actual earnings is things like Keir Starmer bringing the case in the ECHR or under the ECHR about migrants getting benefits, and I expect a lot of that then comes from NGOs. I think we probably need to call in Charlotte Gill. Do you know Charlotte's
Yeah,
brilliant work on
a
how public
fantastic
money.
work. If you don't follow Charlotte on Twitter, follow Charlotte Gill on Twitter.
Yeah, and she's absolutely brilliant on this, on how public money is actually being used for lefty causes. And I suspect Doughty Street plays a very large part of that. Now, obviously, I don't know anything, so Doughty Street can't sue me. Doughty Street's not going to sue me anyway because there's no competent lawyer in the building. But that is a fantastic question, Annunziata. If they were just run-of-the-mill criminal lawyers, which is what they purport to be, they really should be too poor to be doing stuff like this pro bono. It really
Yeah.
shouldn't be possible. Now, of course, a lot of them have family money. and so they don't necessarily need to earn. But actually, the economics of it is, I think, a phenomenally interesting and important question. What
Well,
they
and we
do.
know Keir Starmer is deeply working class, and his father was a toolmaker, so that's not family money.
No, no, and I think we do need to follow the money in all of this. How has Starmer become? And actually, I don't take that as a tease. I mean, okay, he's not absolutely working class. He's obviously quite settled
Yeah.
middle class, but he's not, swimming in it like you what was.
Well,
This is
although
this
there,
is
I saw a post this week about how much some of the cabinet are now worth, and it is follow the money. It is quite fascinating. That only one of them that was listed, which I think was Angela Rayner, was below 5 million, and she was on 4.5. Um, and then you had Lammy and Keir Starmer all on about 5. One of them, and I've actually forgotten who, was on 15. But for people who have essentially always worked in the public sector or trade unions or charities, NGOs, it's quite an impressive way to have made their money somehow.
well, well, yeah, and this is I'm very proud of us as a show because we had no intention of doing this, and
None at
the
all, sorry.
completely disorganized approach to life is perhaps one of the better ways. But yes, and then you look at things like the Chagos deal, and really, isn't the fuel behind the Chagos deal the fact that 8 million was spent on the lawyers? So you're right, Annunciata, because again, Philippe Sands is not a type of lawyer who would ordinarily accrue great earnings. That is a very fair thing to say, and there's Section 3 of the Act. If anybody's watching this and trying to think about suing me, but it's not. He did not practice in an area of law that would normally accrue large sums of money. Yet we have 8 million over Chagos.
Yeah.
What's going on? What is going on? I mean, that is just that it is just fundamentally dodgy. And I would again say that when I see socialism, I see these fat bottom pyramids with very, very few at the top, so that there are thousands and thousands of criminal, bog standard criminal and human rights lawyers who earn pittance. And look, I get rid of the human rights ones, but we have to have a criminal justice system. And
Absolutely.
I'd rather I'd rather bring them into the system and give them a salary. I'd rather fix things for them. But obviously, there are thousands of them who are all very angry. Yet they're all conditioned to be somehow all. It's amazing, isn't it, Annunziata? They all think that Herma, Starmer, and Philippe Sands are somehow heroes, and we can. You don't even have to bet money. They all hate me. Okay, they all hate me. All of
Well,
them.
lots of people do.
Well,
Normal.
I mean, this is where we go to. I retweeted a lowly paid criminal barrister yesterday because they made a very good point about retaining jury trials because we've got to retain jury trials, and I'm like, well, I'll be on the side of the good on this, and I'll put aside the fact that we don't agree politically, and I just got a tweet back saying, please don't, with all due respect, please don't retweet me. Who on earth do you think you
It's so
are? What is
petty.
this?
We've all got to put aside stupid egos, stupid party politics. And I think we do this, we're happy to argue about our different parties, but the bigger picture has got to matter more. And saving the country from socialism, maintaining incredibly important historic rights like jury trials has always got to come above the personal and the party political. To
It's
be in
got
the
to.
British interest. Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, whatever your beliefs, if you're on the right side, I'll support you.
Well, quite, and I always like to point out that Churchill fought the war as a coalition.
Yeah,
It wasn't a conservative government that fought the war. It was a coalition government of Labour and Conservatives. And when your nation faces deep, big existential challenges, I think that is absolutely right that we all come together. So I was deeply. I mean, it just 4 or 5 years ago, I would have cared a lot more, but now I was just like, oh, what a waste of time. It's like, I'm not persona non grata. It's like, what on earth are you on about? Deeply committed loon. I'm obviously respectable. Just just go. But
yeah.
these criminal barristers are on the whole, very largely underpaid and badly paid. So when they go on strike, that is absolutely right. But how can it be that we have, thousands and thousands and thousands of these badly paid criminal barristers, and Philippe Sands, and it was the total payments of the legal team, so it's not entirely to him, but
Yeah.
creaming off a nice slice of 8 million. What is going on there?
Well, and in the Iraq case, where our soldiers were accused of horrible crimes that it turned out were most likely fabricated by the Iraqis accusing them of it.
Fraud. They were fraud. There were
Fraud.
lies about our brave soldiers.
The MOD complained about Herma's fees, that they were too high. And they were not in the £42 or £52 or whatever category. They were in the hundreds of pounds per hour.
It was £450.
There you go. I had 457 in my head, but I will happily drop the 7, which I
Which
could have
will
got
also
wrong.
be plus that, opinionato, just so you know.
Of course,
Because
because he'd be earning over 90 grand a year. With our stupid cut-off thresholds that mean lots and lots of people don't want to take extra work, including plumbers and, not just barristers. But that seemed quite a high amount. He seemed to have gone up from his normal amount in order to charge a government body. Um, Apparently, this is standard practice, but I think we need to
it's
look
not
at.
standard practice. That's called rinsing, everybody. It's rinsing. That's rinsing. Just because
I,
they all, oh, well, if everyone nicks stuff, that's okay. That's not a model. And I'm more than happy to be sued by Richard Hermer over this. I've actually stopped calling Richard Hermer Lord Hermer because I have really so little remaining respect for him that I'm just going to call him Richard. Maybe on Twitter I'll call him Evil Penfold because he looks like Penfold and he's not as nice or as charming. You're making funny faces, but Penfold's actually a really lovely guy. So I'm not insulting I'm not going to insult Penfold. He's Evil Penfold. And if parents are watching this, they know that Evil Penfold comes from the alternate dimension, the alternate reality, and he's got evil red eyes, and he's not like our lovely, charming, good Penfold, who we all love and like. Richard Hermer is Evil Penfold.
okay, I know very little about Penfold.
Do you not
Great
watch?
analogy. Don't
You've got
don't have a clue.
kids.
Yeah, they like watching Is It Cake?
Uh, well, so Danger Mouse has been, because I watched Danger Mouse as a child, but Danger Mouse
I
has been
did watch Danger
relaunched.
Mouse as a child, yeah.
And it's been relaunched completely by lefties. So it's Alexander Armstrong and Stephen Fry being lefty, lefty, lefty.
Okay.
But it is actually really good. It is genuinely good to both of the progressive left regime thinkers. You do well when you do this Danger Mouse. It's a proper thing.
Okay.
And it's got Evil Penfold in it with his red eyes. That's how you tell
Yeah.
that he's Evil Penfold, not our good, innocent, lovely, crumbs and tea loving, lovely Penfold. Richard Hermer is Evil Penfold, who
Cool.
again has accrued vast amounts of money. And I do think we're going to have to ask where this money has come from. Fortunately, Annunciata, in our laws, we have something called unexplained wealth orders.
Wow.
Wouldn't it be
Well,
fun
the
to get a
next
new
government.
government in place?
Oh, I can't wait till we get a new government. I think we will find out a lot, whether it's my party, your party, or an amalgamation of the two. As long as it's not the SNP, Green, Labour, lefty alliance that recent polls have shown we might be faced with.
So we were supposed to talk about Starmer, and I suppose I mean I'm actually guessing that the reason we didn't is because there's very little to say about the man now. I mean, I've publicly called him a shit weasel.
I have seen people calling him worse. I think we've all given up on Starmer, haven't we? We've moved on to who is it next? It'll probably start in the next week or so. We've got local elections any minute, and the national ones in Scotland and Wales. They're going to be a bloodbath for Labour councillors. A lot of those Labour councillors don't necessarily deserve to be thrown out, except for the fact they're in the Labour Party, and they're falling to pieces because they came into national office across the country without a clue what they were doing, and have been very bad at doing it. And Keir Starmer has lied a bit more. So we're all now just waiting for Keir Starmer to go and placing our bets. If you're a betting person, I'm not, but on which one of them comes next. And Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband. None of it's looking great.
No, it's a car crash. Now we are in Purda, and one of the things I like to point out is that almost nobody now knows what that means. There is absolutely no clear definition of what Purda actually means, what anyone can actually say. You will have done the media during Purda. I've done the media during Purda, and I won't name any stations or channels, but I'll just say nobody actually knows what Purda means because we are living through broadly rule of law collapse. But so I will just say, because I think possibly we're under Purda, you and me, right now.
I think we're not. Um,
No one knows. This is the problem. So all I want to say about the elections is that there are elections on May the 7th. That is Thursday next week. I don't care how you vote. Please vote.
yeah.
Because it's really, really, for me, and I think come the next general election, I'll be interested in your views on this, but I actually might go like total neutral and just become like a Dalai Lama figure, just calling for people to just vote. Because not voting has not got us anywhere. Not voting is a weakness. Turnouts down to 40%. That means 60% of people, that's 6 people in 10 in Spoons, do not vote. That is wrong. Everybody
Lots,
in Spoons should be voting. I don't care who they vote for. They should be voting.
lots and lots of local elections. You're very lucky to get 30. 25% is a regular turnout in a local council election. And that really isn't democratic. And we have this argument when it comes to things like voting to strike. If it's under 50%, should it be a valid vote? And I think there are certainly arguments that our local elections, people aren't engaged enough. People don't care enough to vote. But I think that's because we've got such a watered down version of democracy, where if you look at our local councils, what I forget now what percentages it is, but it's over 60% of their budget is dictated how it's spent by Westminster. So whether you vote in red, blue, green, yellow, purple, or, whatever, they're not going to be able to change what happens in your area. So why do you bother voting? Because the money you pay in council tax will still be dictated by central government where it goes, and it's mainly care for the elderly and children's services, which includes things like school transport, etc. And if the councillors can't make a democratic difference, I completely understand why people don't vote for them.
Yeah, but that is this. I put on my little twirly mustache. That is the evil plan of the communists. That is their plan. They want to, degrade us and cause us to step into despair to the point where we don't vote. And I was a local councillor, and I can absolutely confirm that you bang on the nail. The two big expenditures: adult social care and send taxis.
Yeah.
And we need to just rejig the entire system so that we actually get local democracy again. And one of the things
completely agree.
yeah, and one of the things that I think, so I was a unitary councillor, so that's in a
Yeah,
unitary council, a newly formed idea that you have one council that does the entire county. I think they're an abomination.
I
I think
agree.
way too much power, and they're just dictated to you by central government, so
Yeah,
that there is no local democracy.
yeah.
It's
Um,
a
and
complete
and
waste.
it it took the district councils, it made further more distant from their voters. It was brought in, I remember fighting against it very hard in Somerset pre 2010, and we did avoid it, and then they brought it in after I had moved out of Somerset. But they promised and promised and promised it was going to be this amazing cost-cutting measure, because instead of 2 layers of council, you were going to have one. It cost more money and it reduced democracy.
Yeah, And that's all that happens. So
Yeah.
this whole system just needs to be utterly ripped out, as far as I'm concerned. Um, now, as if I were a cheap reform supporter, I'd make some party political point about this. But I think the better thing is to just acknowledge that Labour and Conservatives both let the civil service run things. Really, that's what happened. And this is the civil servant's idea of perfection. This is the civil servant's idea and the civil servants always, or ever since Yes Minister, Sir Humphrey praising the hospital that won awards because it's absolutely full of administrators, hasn't got a single medic in it, and hasn't got a single patient, but keeps winning awards for efficiency. And it's like, that is, if you give into the bureaucratic mindset, that is what happens.
Yeah.
I still want to somehow bring all this back to talking about how Keir Starmer is awful, but he's just so awful that there's just nothing really left to say, is there?
He's a dead man walking. He's a prime minister in name only. No one is any longer taking him seriously. The Labour Party propped him up in a vote, which was absolutely pathetic. And I think voters will remember that they didn't put country before party. It was appalling that he had to whip them to support him. That shows how weak
Yeah,
he
that was
is.
really pathetic. Really
Um,
pathetic.
if you can't get your
Boris
own
didn't do
party,
that.
no, he didn't. And he went actually in the end without a vote, because he sort of went mea culpa. But it's just not the. If you were in a job, if you were the CEO of a company and you were being had up for gross misconduct, in your role, you would not be able to go round and say to all your staff, well, you'll only get your pay rise if you vote, if you find me not guilty, and I get to stay in my job. And the Privileges Committee is no different. It is basically the HR function of the House of Commons to make sure that people are abiding by the rules of the House, the criteria by which they have to behave. And it's really underhand and inappropriate to whip people in those circumstances. I think the Labour backbenchers were probably wet enough not to vote against Keir Starmer anyway, but the fact he whipped them made it look a lot worse.
It is. It really is horrendous that he whipped them, and I hope viewers understand what that means. That they basically were told if you don't vote in favor of Keir Starmer, you will lose party affiliation. You will lose all the money that we put into your re-election campaign. You will have to fight a re-election as an independent.
Oh, and if we've got any dirt on you in our little black book, we will let the press know about it. There are threats as well as um, promises of election money and so forth. They might promise you'll get a ministerial role in the next reshuffle. They might say you'll lose everything if you don't. And there's a dark art to whipping. Just as a complete aside, where does the term come from?
I don't know, but I'm starting to suspect that you have a deep knowledge of whipping. And
Uh,
it's starting to scare me because I'm a very pure man. I'm a pure, innocent waif of a thing. I have no idea about such things.
it is a good countryside tradition. It is from hunting and whipping in. And to this day, we have whippers in hunting, whose job is to keep the hounds under control.
Oh, and those hounds are just basically big beagles. So I'm immediately on the side of the hounds
Yeah,
because
no, it's only
we
so
have
that they
that.
don't wander off and get lost. They don't actually lash. They have long whips, but they just go like that. They don't hit the hounds.
No, and that's good because Bella would wander. She
Yeah.
wanders. I'm middle aged, and so I fall asleep, and then she wanders around the house eating stuff. It's actually a really good recycling system because I tend to leave cardboard all over the place, and Bella seems to eat cardboard. So it's like we don't have to wait for the recycling box. I'll just fall asleep, and Bella just eats it, assuming it's food, which it obviously isn't.
Having had a dog and toddlers in the house at the same time. They are the most fantastic floor cleaners. When your toddler starts throwing banana and other purees all over the place, the dogs just go around and clear it up. It's great.
Yeah, they do. They're a massive shout out to dogs.
Yeah,
We've had all sorts of things, dropping a yogurt on the floor. No problem if you got a dog.
exactly.
Massive problem if you don't. But so pro dogs always. We, Annunciata and I, are pro dogs.
Yep.
But whatever. What are we called again? The thing. What are we doing?
Too
Have I got my
right.
teeth? Have I got my teeth? What are we called?
Well,
We are.
we're being rude about Starmer, except for I just can't believe he's going to be here in 3 months' time.
No.
Um,
No, he
except for the
can't be. Can he? How can
except for
he be there?
except for the slight fact that his potential replacements are all in a complete state of chaos. So we hear that Wes Streeting
Diddy
has
wee
the num
man.
has the numbers to stand under the Labour Party rules. You've got to have 80 MPs. They've got to publicly announce who they're standing for, and apparently Wes Streeting has this. So why doesn't he get on and do it? Because it seems like none of the others do. It should be a slam dunk. But Rayner is all over the shop, and if the press is to be believed, trying to lobby people by having rather too much to drink in strangers'
Oh,
bar.
I don't like that. I really didn't like this story. It was one of those ones that I really just don't like. It's like it was Monday night. The Tuesday was going to be taken up entirely by committee hearings about Starmer being awful and Morgan McSweeney not really losing his phone. And Wednesday was the prorogation. So can't she get a bit tiddly? Is that not allowed?
I don't mind. I think it was a very inappropriate setting. Um, and she should have chosen her timing and or her location much better. And actually, it does come down to judgment on that. The I mean, we had Winston Churchill, who notoriously lived, as far as one can tell, on a diet of cigars and alcohol.
Well, he
And
did, but you've got a point because he was very measured. So whilst Winston drank almost constantly throughout the day
yeah,
and throughout the war, his drinking during the day was very, very measured. He'd have what we would call a double shot of brandy. Then he'd have it in a pint of lemonade, which he would sip basically throughout the day. And if it was a really stressful day, he'd have another one. But that is very measured. And then most days he'd go home and that would be the totality of his drinking, which, we're all adults. That's quite enough to you burn through that. That is not, you're not drunk. But then he would go to dinners from time to time where he would have a bottle and a half of champagne himself.
yeah, which is quite a bit.
It's quite a bit. It's enough to get anybody tiddly and giggly, but it's not enough to make you fall down or make irrational decisions. And he would be taken home. And, you know, if I could campaign in this country, it would be for a far more sophisticated relationship with alcohol. Just admit that we do actually need it. It is part of what we do. Most of us are evolved to have it. If you've got skin like ours, you didn't survive winter without drinking booze because it was the only reliable source of calories. That's why the Russians are all,
Yeah, I never heard that. How absolutely fascinating. And certainly the colder countries do seem to have much bigger drinking cultures. And whether you look to Scotland, which has got the worst problem in the United Kingdom, or you look to the Scandinavian countries where they've got these incredible rates of tax, or indeed Russia, which you've mentioned and is kind of globally notorious, I think.
yeah. Well, we found this when we discovered the Inuit in the north of Canada, the Arctic peoples who they had not discovered fermentation. They couldn't do it themselves, but they got through the winter on seal blubber. So they literally eat seal fat, which is a really concentrated, very, very high calorie form of fat. And they just went, booze is more fun. And then they literally, and so now Canada has a problem with what they call alcoholic Inuits. But it's like we've just got. I think we've just got to have a much more sophisticated relationship with this both drug and food stuff, because it is both a drug and a food stuff. And what Churchill was using it for is exactly the same reason that a smoker uses, or a vapor uses their vape for, which is to take the nerves off the anxiety. That's what, because we have to admit that being human is anxious. We're a pretty nasty race, particularly to each other. I mean, that's why racism is so ridiculous, because all humans are basically awful. But I don't mean to get philosophical. But yeah, so we've gone slightly off topic. I still don't. We just have nothing to say about Starmer. I'm desperate to talk about it.
No, I'm
We have
still on
nothing
his
to say.
replacements. And of course, there's Ed Miliband, who wants to stop us drying our clothes now, or to,
Now you
dry
just know he's got two traditional tumble dryers in that house of his.
He's got
He,
two kitchens.
he's got two
So,
kitchens. He's got an
yeah,
absolutely lovely, London townhouse. There are going to be two tumble dryers in Ed Miliband's house, aren't there? They're going to be Mila, and they're not going to die for 20 years. So the rest of us have to have a crappy tumble dryer.
yeah, absolutely. We've got to have an extra slow, extra expensive tumble dryer. So that we can make 0.000000001% of nothing.
Yeah, it's just
Uh,
it's just communism.
it is, and it's that kind of relentless attack on our comfort, on our affordability of life, on our well-being, whether it's heat or warmth or wealth. It's this relentless attack. And he is so definitely part of it. Today I was driving around Lincolnshire, and the immense landscapes of fields creating food, and then thinking of the thousands of acres he wants to cover in solar panels. And you're like, well, it's not going to solve any problem. However much you believe in the climate crisis, which I think is questionable as to what impact we could have anyway.
Well, I think it's bollocks, but that's because I'm working class and you're an honourable. You're an on.
I don't think we can do anything about it in our country, and I don't think we can actually change the global temperatures, even if it was an international effort. I think we have to ameliorate, not try and change
Ooh,
the course of the future.
that's a nice
But
word. I flag up a million. That's nice. Ooh, look at you getting all technical. Nice word.
we need to make sure humans, animals, and our climate, our planet, can survive a very likely climate change if the forecasts are right. But given the forecasts on the weather, I'm not completely convinced by that either. But never mind. I know the long term is very different to the short term, and yes, people get into weather versus climate and blah. But we're not going to make a difference on it. Certainly, putting solar panels over our main county of food supply in this country is not going to change the world's climate. What it is going to do is put up British food prices, because we will have to start importing. That in turn will use oil to power ships to get here. It makes us poorer, and it doesn't make anything better. It exports the problems, it doesn't solve them. And just shoving our problems to somewhere we can't see is utterly meaningless and just makes us worse off.
Well, to my mind, it just proves that carbon's not a problem. So if they're happy to import gas that, when burnt, causes carbon via ships rather than getting out the ground, so you're maximizing the carbon production, then you're basically
Yeah.
admitting carbon dioxide doesn't matter. You're just admitting it. Just
Well,
admit it.
and in Ireland, they've got a policy at the moment on beef, and they're getting rid of millions of cows.
But these
And
are the
they're
luxury
importing
goods.
them, they're importing the beef from Brazil.
That's just
I'm like,
mental. So
the
do you,
cows are still farting in Brazil. If
of
that's
course,
your issue, they're still farting. They're just farting in Brazil. And then you're shipping them on oil-driven tankers.
I'd just like
over
to
12.
highlight that the Honourable Annunciata Rees-Mogg said the word farting on air twice, not once, twice. So I just think that's great. But there are certainly certain luxury goods in society. Being warm is a luxury. You know, being safe is a luxury. Having electricity is definitely a luxury. But the oldest luxury good in the world is beef. And this is what the Acropolis is about in Athens. So if you look at the Acropolis, the Parthenon, beautiful, beautiful, incredible temple. You know,
Yeah,
they're always trying to nick the Elgin marbles for no reason. But anyway, just ignore that. What
yeah,
you'll notice if you look at the Parthenon is that there is a ramp up. Okay. And then people are like, oh, that's so we can get up. It's like, no, that's so the cows can get up. Once a year, Athens took the city's herd of cows up there. It turns out, Annunziata, and you will be amazed by this. I hope you're sitting down, and I'm glad that you are. That the best bit of the cow, obviously, that's what you have to give to the gods. You have to sacrifice the best bit of the cow to the gods. Well, it turns out that's all the entrails and the stuff that we can't eat. So that's
yeah,
really good.
yeah,
That was like a massive win. That was like a thank you, God. We'll burn this in honor of you. But you know, obviously, we can't actually eat it. They're literally gutting them and butchering them in the old classic word of butchering. Then obviously the very elite are eating the fillet steak and having a bit of what's it called, Chateaubriand, which is probably what you have for breakfast, given how posh
oh,
you are.
yeah, yeah,
But but the point was that every male citizen would get a full plate of beef on that day. And it's a real bonding exercise between the citizens of Athens that, regardless of rich or poor, if you were a citizen of Athens, you would eat beef that day. And beef is a massive luxury good. And look at our culture. We're built on this. Britain is built on beef and the idea that beef can be freely available to everybody. That's what the beef eaters are. The French attack us. They call us roast beefs. And it's like, yes, because we're all about this because beef is without question the best of the meats, although chicken has come a huge way, and I'd argue very good, very much for properly farmed chicken as a luxury meat. But beef has always been the absolute standard, the absolute gold standard. And look at that, the Parthenon in Athens.
we're built on both beef and sheep. Yes, lamb, but wool. Very, very importantly, wool. And if you drive around the UK, I would say get trains, but in Lincolnshire we don't have any. So drive around the UK, you will find town after town that has been entirely built on the wool trade. And our wealth was hugely dependent on it, and therefore the whole population's well-being. And sheep are now obviously terrible because they can graze areas that people think should be entirely wild and don't realise are only as they are because they're grazed by sheep, because sheep in turn fertilise the ground, because sheep can get to places other animals cannot, because you can't do anything else with the land, and no trees are not going to suddenly crop up and have great forests. Um, but the sort of demonization of eating meat and using its byproducts right now I'm wearing leather shoes, I'm wearing a wool jumper. These are natural products. They do not come from oil. And I find it hugely ironic, or moronic, if you prefer, that the vegan people are also quite often the very eco people who want both to ban oil and stop us wearing natural products. Do they not know where polyester comes from? Have they not studied organic chemistry?
I just think
It's
they're psychos who don't care. I mean, Hitler was a vegetarian, and I don't. I think that was enough to my mind, to end vegetarianism. I just think the far better thing is to be
He
Mufasa.
also loved animals, and I love
Allegedly,
dogs. So there we go.
allegedly.
Um,
But the far better thing is to be Mufasa in The Lion King and just to say that, we eat the antelope. And, when we die, the antelope eat the grass. And when we die, our bodies become the grass. I can't do James L. Jones. I was never going to try James L. Jones. That is a voice
yeah,
as well outside my. But anyway, just because we're wrapping this up, and I want to move on to an important topic. So we're just going to
Yeah.
do a quick segue. Tell me why viewers might notice that you've got a big red thing in the middle of your lip.
Ah, is it still there?
Yeah,
Oh,
still
yeah.
there.
Um, yes, I do love dogs, and I have three, because our lovely dog had puppies last year, and we kept two of her puppies. But I went to kiss mummy dog's head, and as I went like that, she went like that. And the top of her head got me smack in the middle of my lips and smashed them into my teeth and her skull, which hurt quite a lot. She didn't care less. She just felt really bad that I was clearly in pain. And so, did the dog thing of nuzzling me a lot to make sure I was okay. But it did go very red and bled a bit, and
Because she's a Labrador,
it's
isn't she?
healing. It now feels fine. She's half lab, yeah.
And labs have massive heads. They are basically battering rams.
Very solid, it turns out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's very little thinking needed for Labradors. They make Winnie the Pooh look intellectual. But I love them, but they do.
So clever when they want to be, if they're, driven, like by food, basically. But they're guide dogs. They're not stupid.
No, they are the best of dogs. I love my Bella the Beagle, but I would never advise anybody to get a Beagle. And I would always advise everybody to get a Labrador. And we have Biscuit the baby boy, who is just lovely. Although he has hurt my child, who is publicly known as Small Person, innumerable times, and every time Small is there just crying and probably bleeding and just going, it's not his fault, he doesn't know. And it's like, no, I know, but I wish you weren't injured by his massive head. These things
Yeah.
make siege engines look, so wonder the Romans didn't harness them together and just charge them at walls.
You should try walking my two puppies who are not very well behaved on the lead. So if you have a lead in each hand, it is like being pulled by huskies. Not always in the same direction. But I do end up running if they're going in the same direction because there is no way to stop them. I basically need a husky sleigh.
Yep, you do. But also to walk a beagle is to not walk a beagle, it's to fly a beagle-shaped kite. That's what you basically do. It's basically what's going on. Right, in the last few minutes we've got, we're going to do a serious topic now, which is this rise of anti-Semitism in our country, because it is absolutely unacceptable. And I think everybody is finally at the point where we are really just not, we're no more thoughts and prayers. That can go boil its head. We're not thoughts and praying anymore. Where how do we protect British Jews? Because there is something going absolutely vilely wrong that is targeting innocent British Jews for no reason and is just full of hate. So tell me, introduce this.
Yet again this week there was an anti-Semitic terrorist attack in London, in North London, again, whereby a man walked down the street, randomly selected two Jewish men, and stabbed them, one in the chest, one in the neck. They are both, I think, very lucky to have survived at all. And it was immediately declared a terrorist incident. He
Which
was,
is an improvement, isn't it?
which
Because in
is an
in the
improvement.
past they would have just denied it was terrorism.
And I think the details, had it been 2 years ago, would have been much slower to have come out, or certainly 18 months ago, that we saw in other attacks that the identity of the culprit, or the accused, was very slow to be disseminated. They did actually do all of that quite fast. For once, I thought Rowley, the head of the Met, gave a pretty good response. He got booed. Um,
I would have booed him. I don't like him generally
I
at all.
think the policing up to this point deserves booing, but I think his response was actually quite good. And he did absolutely condemn, but more than condemn, he called on our politicians to condemn anti-Semitism. And I think that is the piece that has been missing, that we have had hate marches week in, week out, basically for as long as anyone can remember now, but all going back to within 24 hours of the horrific events in Israel in October 2023. And these marches started to show solidarity with the Palestinians, um, despite the fact that completely innocent Jewish men, women, children, and babies had been slaughtered in cold blood by Palestinians. And we've let
Slaughtered
the
and raped. It was
slaughtered and I mean all
pure evil.
sorts of unbelievably vile. I haven't watched the film of the events. That was taken by the Hamas perpetrators.
Yeah, they
They were
filmed it
so
themselves on
proud.
GoPros. They were proud.
They were so proud. They filmed it on GoPros. They also filmed it on their victims' own mobile phones. The whole thing is so stomach churning and disgusting. Is the Israeli state without any fault ever in anything? No, I don't think anyone is arguing that. But were those acts so inhumane that it is really quite unbelievable that even just hours afterwards, people were taking to the street against Israel? I think is truly shocking. But this has been accepted ever since, that you can go and march against Israel, and being against Israel is the very acceptable face of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
That it is fashionable, it is popular to be anti-Zionist. The problem is that should the Israelis have somewhere, have a homeland? Yes, in my view, they should. Is Netanyahu a hero? No, not really. I know nowhere near as much about him as I would British politics, but is he faultless? 100% not. No, he has made very bad decisions. He's not of my politics a lot of the time. But they have a right to a homeland, and they have a right to a safe homeland. It is, after all, the only democracy in the Middle East. It is it's got complete religious, ethnic, and orientation acceptance.
Yeah,
It's a
and
very
that's
permissive society.
because you and I are both Christians, so
Yeah,
they look after the Church of the Holy Sepulchre for us.
they do. But they also have a large Palestinian population who
Yeah,
are
and but they've got
absolutely
Palestinian
free.
Arabs in their parliament. They got them in their
Yep,
courts as judges.
yep.
This is
And they are
impressive.
completely free to continue being Muslims and practicing, but they also are perfectly accepting that there are gay people in this
Yep.
world, which most of their neighbours are not. Quite possibly all of their neighbours, but I haven't quite done an examination of that. But people are assimilating, not liking uh, the Israeli government, with it being okay to hate all Jews.
Yeah.
And so the people who have always hated Jews are now seemingly absolutely at liberty to do so, and they can do it under the cover of anti-Zionism. And the blurring of the two, and no politicians calling this out, particularly not in the Labour Party. And we all remember what it was like um, when various people had to resign and Luciana Berger had to leave the party because being Jewish was virtually impossible
Which is
within the
just
Labour
it's just
Party.
wicked. And but in our last minutes, let's maybe do something. I mean, let's do something I literally thought I'd never do. which is I'm going to praise Mark Rowley.
Yeah.
Literally thought that would never happen.
No,
But
agree.
after those brave officers took down and I'm going to use the word shitweasel, who stabbed innocent Jewish people, allegedly. I have to say allegedly, because nobody understands. I really don't. But as if I'm prejudicing a trial, we've got it on film. But I'll say allegedly because everybody does, just in case he pleads not guilty. But the immediate response by the left that you and I are both used to, and this is what we're immune to, because it would never be out. This is the point of this show, because we're right wingers. We don't agree on everything. We disagree. We're in different parties. We argue. We fall out. Doesn't matter. I'm obviously right. Annunciata's wrong. But we, as right wingers, would never condemn those officers. And what was lovely to see is the sea change in the atmosphere. Because in
Yeah.
the old days, immediately after that, there would have been some dickhead on Twitter, probably a lefty lawyer. I could name the Twitter accounts. They all hate me. But who would have immediately gone on and gone, that's unreasonable force. Oh, no, 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 that's unreasonable force. And what was beautiful to see was that actually the Mets' own Twitter account came first. And then came Rowley himself descending into the arena and going, my officers have used proportionate force. And
Yeah.
correcting Zach Polanski, who's a complete shyster of a man. And that was beautiful to see. So I have to praise Mark Rowley because I'm right wing, which means I'm consistent in my intellectual opinions and ideas. I have to praise Mark Rowley.
As we said earlier, it should always be the bigger issue, not picking up on every difference. And the bigger issue here is that the police, if they are going to stop terrible acts happening, need not only public support, but their own senior officers' support. And he actually came out and gave it. And that is, it's depressing that it's so unusual, but it is unusual. And he does deserve credit for that. He also did get Zach Polanski to apologize.
Or
So.
semi-apologize. But right, so there's been too much. So I'm already too angry that I've had to praise Mark Rowley, which I never thought I'd do, but I've done it, and it's genuine praise.
Yeah.
The better praise, for my mind, and what makes me a lot happier, is to praise those brave officers. I don't think they've been named. I think they should get honours and awards. I think we should use the honours and awards system
I
properly.
haven't seen his name anywhere. Apologies if it is out there. But the man who seemed to have a stick who went and helped them as well.
Exactly. He needs an award too. He's a very brave man. I don't think he has been named. And I think the Jewish community often don't name people because they don't want reprisals, which I fully understand. But, I'd just give the man a CBE. Yeah. Right before we end this, I have to fire. It's good that we didn't film this on Wednesday because I was angry about two things that the Conservative Party had done, Annunciata.
Oh, God.
I've forgotten one of them. Okay, so you're not getting both barrels. You're just getting one barrel. But it's really, really irritated me. Okay, there is a danger. Our politicians are under threat. They are at risk. And the Conservative Party, particularly Kevin Hollinrake, who I really do not like, he's the reason I left the Conservative Party. I consider him an absolute wrong-un. I don't like him. I think he is a morally bad human being. I do not like him. That he's doing this. My former editor, Fraser Nelson, is also doing this. The Conservative Party is trying to spin some negative story about Nigel Farage because he needs security. And I'm angry.
Nigel Farage got a donation of £5 million
for security
in his personal capacity for his personal security. I am not going to stand with Fraser Nelson or Kevin Hollinrake on this. That I used to be an MEP for Nigel, and he actually provided me with security as well.
Did he?
Yeah. He was very, very aware.
I hate the fact that you needed security.
The threats to his candidates, because there are haters in our society, and they don't only hate Jewish people, they hate anyone whose politics they don't like. And I mean, you and I see them probably daily, or certainly I do daily on Twitter and the like, that there are
Mm.
vile people out there, and those people do tip over into physical violence. And I'm a great believer in sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And unfortunately, it does get to sticks and stones. And we've seen with David Amos how
Yes.
incredibly dangerous and deadly that can be. He was
And
a
Joe Cox.
and Joe Cox.
So
I didn't
we
know
lost
Joe
both of them.
Cox. David Amos was an
Did you know
incredible.
him?
I'd met him, and obviously have people who knew him far better, very close to me. And I have never heard anyone say a bad word about him. He was a incredibly nice man who did not deserve to be attacked, let alone murdered. And we shouldn't have this danger in our society.
No,
But
Nigel Farage shouldn't have needed 5 million quid
but
to keep safe. He shouldn't have
that that
needed it.
he shouldn't have needed it. But all of our politicians are under some level of threat. And I think this is more and more true. And I don't know how you arrest it, or make us all a nicer society. And we certainly see it in America, where Trump's on his third
Oh,
assassination attempt.
it's outrageous.
Because, although he got the majority of American votes, there's a small proportion who don't just dislike him, who don't just want to vote against him, they want to kill him.
He didn't.
And
Trump didn't just win. He won everything, all the
yeah,
metrics in their
he
system.
won
He
all the
won,
metrics. Yeah, yeah, he
and they
won.
still want to kill him. It's just outrageous. And so I'm just going to point out that I don't like your party for doing this, because as far as I'm concerned, Annunciati, the Conservative Party is endorsing this. Kevin Hollingrake, as it stands, is the Conservative Party something or other. And I do not like Kevin Hollingrake, but I'm very grateful for what you've said. To turn it around, maybe I'll point out that years ago, I think before I knew you, I got very, very upset when I watched Jacob and his young children surrounded by a baying mob in
Yeah.
London, and that is just not on. And it's not on if it's a Labour politician. It's not on if it's a Green politician. I don't care what the politics of the politician is. You leave kids alone. So that was deeply upsetting to
I
watch him
think
surrounded.
that was particularly awful because it was including his children. But I think you should leave the adult politicians themselves alone. That we should have much, much more free speech and much, much less violence.
Yeah.
And that's where things have gone wrong. I think as soon as you stop true free speech, you harbour violence. Because if you can't get out your frustration in one way, it will come out another way.